Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Committee on Wednesday the 30th of August 2023. I'm going to change the running order of the agenda. We'll take item 5 first, and then we'll go to 10 to allow the 2 ward members to speak. So first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. And if I go to Councillor Van Dijk, you can give apologies for. So, yeah, thank you. Any other absentees? Councillor Lammers. Okay. Is it agreed that I sign the minutes of the previous meeting? Excellent. Urgent matters of reasons of special circumstances. I'm not aware of any, none be given to me. Okay, moving on to 4, declarations of disposable pecuniary interests and other significant interests. Councillor Stamp.
It's for the Avenue Tennis application. I have a significant interest because I've previously spoken against planning applications.
Excellent, and you'll be leaving the room. Leave the room, okay. Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chairman. Exactly the same thing as Councillor Stamp. I shall be leaving the room for that particular item. But also on item number 8 regarding the balancing pond application at St Andrews Park. I have asked before in regards to the applicant and the director of this site. I wish to make it very clear that potentially the applicant or the director of that site is known to me, but I'm not a friend of his. I've never associated with him, and I will be staying here during that application.
Understood. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. Exactly the same as my colleague, Councillor Etheridge. The same interest that I have a past connection with the director of St Andrews Park. But I think it's so insignificant now. It doesn't matter. The last time I met the gentleman concerned was at another councillor's funeral over 3 years ago. So I feel perfectly happy in my own mind of staying in. Whilst we're on the subject of pecuniary interests, Chair, I was wondering if you and your group were going to declare an interest.
In
item 8.
Who are we talking about?
I'm talking about the application for a co-op store. You are calling yourselves the Labour Cooperative Group.
Sorry,
the Cooperative Group as a company make a political contribution to the Cooperative Party. That is a pecuniary interest. I just wondered if you were going to declare that pecuniary interest.
There's a significant difference between the retail part of the co-op and the Cooperative Party. Thank you.
Not according to the company report of the co-op group. It makes it explicitly clear if you read the company report of the co-op group, under governance, it states that they make a substantial contribution to the Cooperative Party.
Chair, thank you. I noted that issue as well and spoke to the legal officer at the beginning of the meeting and was advised that there was no issue for the Labour and Cooperative Group on that matter.
Because there's a significant difference between the retail group and the co-op party. Councillor Halgrove Scott.
Yes, I just, for the purposes of transparency, the former outstanding head of St Nicholas' School is one of my best pals. We were deputies together and are still good friends. It's her deputy who's now the head of St Nicholas' School. I don't know Ruth that well, but I have met her in, Chris Gingle's pantomimes, summer trips, blah, blah, but just so you know.
Understood. Anybody else? If not, can I move on to item 5? Councillor Clark will speak after the presentation by Sam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This application is at 22 Hurstwood, concerns planning. Apologies. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. This application is for 22 Hurstwood and apologies. Yep, I've got the screen. Yeah. I've got, so it contains 22 Hurstwood and is for the conversion of a C3 dwelling house into a C2 children's home, supporting 4 children between the ages of 12 and 17, with 3 carers present on site at all times. The application has previously been seen at Planning Committee, however was deferred on the basis of concerns relating to this property and this property here, which is number 14 and 16 Hurstwood, on the grounds that they were used as supported living accommodation. However, since officers approached Medway Council's adult services and children's services, who in response to the proximity of the existing supported living units, offered verbal statement confirming that while the application site is not necessarily typical or ideal, they do not object to the proposal on the basis of concerns of safeguarding children, particularly when considering the site in conjunction with the rigorous standards of risk assessment and management that would need to be submitted to Ofsted, which sits outside the realm of planning permission and is addresses the more day-to-day running of the home, and likewise stresses that Medway's demand for additional children's services. Notwithstanding, you can see the property located here. It's a relatively large property which forms half of a pair of semi-detached dwelling houses located on the corner of Hurstwood. Features 2 off-street car parking bays here, a double-storey side extension with a garage here. Here are just some wider site photos. Internally, you can see there's a dining room, living room, and kitchen, with a garage here and bathroom here in that side extension. Upstairs, there's 5 bedrooms with a bathroom. Proposed plans don't differ so much on the outside, with the only addition being this infill window to support the facilitation of the conversion of the garage into an office space. Internally, there's this internal infill to split up the 2 rooms here. So you've got a study, a living room, kitchen. This is the office space that's been converted, and a bathroom. Upstairs, there's 4 bedrooms for the children, 1 bedroom for the staff, and 1 bedroom and a bathroom. It's important to note that these 4 bedrooms do meet the nationally prescribed space standards. However, this one here for the staff doesn't. However, in terms of planning, that's not considered a reason to object on the basis this is not a habitable room, or in other words, it's not a room for the purpose of living, but for the workers or the staff in this instance. Also, in terms of policy contents, of relevance is policy H8, which sets out the plan decisions should ensure developments do not adversely impact residential amenity, in appropriate cases have a degree of mobility and independence with access to shops and other facilities, provide adequate amenity space for residents, ensure that parking is adequate for staff, visitors and service vehicles, and the final criteria sets out that properties need to be too large to reasonably expect occupation in a single household. That being said, in this instance, as with other C2 applications presented to members, it's not considered the final criteria of relevance as it's been established by formally approved children's homes that these types of applications seek to deinstitutionalise children from care with the aim of providing care for young persons that's reflective of living as part of a family and in a family home. Likewise, in terms of amenity impacts on adjoining residents, it's not considered reasonable to assume the level of noise or disturbance would likely go above and beyond that of a large family dwelling such as this, particularly considering the level of care the children would be receiving. This has also been stated to members during other previous applications for children's homes. Similarly, members have also been advised in previous applications that the level of coming and goings and the level of car ownership associated with these properties would again be comparable to that of a large family dwelling. The final consideration, and the reason for the deferral on the last planning committee, is the perceived over-provision of the supported living accommodation in Hurstwood with the existing presence of 14 and 16. However, it's important to note that number 14 and 16 in the framework of planning's attention is not considered to be of material change to the dwelling house and is still considered to contribute to Medway's varied housing demand. The care provided in these properties is for intrinsic care, therefore falls within Class C3B and is considered lawful development, which does not require planning permission. So essentially, from a planning lens, when looking at the application, it would be seen as a change of use from one property in a row of 40 houses, which does not represent an overconcentration of C2. So for that reason, we're recommending approval.
Thank you. Our members agreed that Councillor Clark, as ward member, can speak to this application. There is a rule we have that is agreed practice for members who represent a single member ward. We allow such members to speak twice on any given application. The committee agreed this single member ward protocol when Cuxton Halling was such a ward. So this is the second time Councillor Clark has spoken. Thank you. Is it agreed that we let him speak? Agreed. Yeah.
Apologies. Thank you. Issues fundamentally the same as when we first looked at this on the 5th of July. Since then, we've had that briefing note from legal, and I believe that re-emphasises those points of conflict, and in particular, it leads on the Wednesbury reasonableness rationale principles. Simply, is it reasonable, is it rational to put vulnerable, potentially traumatised children into a unit that is in ultra-close proximity to two supported living units nearby? Despite the planning officer's comment about Children's Services not having safeguards concerns, in a meeting on the Thursday last week, where Mr Faulkner and Mr Sam were present, they did not state that they do not have safeguarding concerns. Those are acknowledged, that there are there by very nature. The applicant's own Regulation 46 document evidences that last year there were 41 police call-outs to that postcode. We don't have blue light details from CCAM, but we know that last week there were 3 ambulances outside of those homes. Ofsted's own risk assessment process asks if children are being put at risk of exploitation. And again, I'm not stating that this is necessarily going to be the case, but this is a clear risk for these children. I want to look at the standard of the occupant amenity, which has been highlighted on there. The application now, you have seen, talks of children potentially with disabilities, and it has just that one small bathroom you saw on that downstairs loo. There are going to be 7 people minimum, plus whoever is visiting and supporting those children in that room, in each of those rooms at times. In downstairs, there'll be a smaller divided room. Again, you're looking to fit 7 potential adults, if these are 17-year-olds, and again, you'll have the visitors. It's a very cramped form. You saw that it sits on a large plot. The front is unusable because it's on a slope, and if you see the back, 3/4 of that are on a steep slope that has a 4-foot drop down to a small patio area. There is not this space that you would expect for children who have particular needs and probably going to need space. The parking issue has 3 staff, not 2. It doesn't have sufficient parking, and it says that in your application that you've read, that there will be just 2 visits by social workers in a 2-month period. Are we seriously saying that for 4 vulnerable, potentially disturbed children with needs, that there's going to be 2 social visits in 2 months? Again, I asked who had written that, and they were unable to confirm who had provided that information. The H2 policy on loss of existing residential accommodation is being very selectively used. We're talking about a loss of a 3rd house in 5, potentially changing the nature and status of an area. The interpretation of the H policy similarly. I repeat the concerns over parking. That should be an issue. Occupiers amenity space. Impact on neighbours. These are being ignored. The report downplays the potential noise impact on the neighbours. It's a semi-detached property. Saying 4 potentially vulnerable and traumatised children, plus 3 staff, plus a myriad of social workers and other visitors, will cause no more disturbance than a normal family home is crazy. Remember the issues that we have with the supported living units just down the door that are already causing neighbourhood issue. Colleagues, we can't consider the applicant, we can't consider a lot of the things we talked of last time, but in the light of the safeguarding risks, the issues around parking, the poor levels of occupier amenity, especially the cramped ground floor and bathroom, the poor outside space, the H2 and H8 policies, the impact particularly on the neighbourhood's amenity, I would ask you again, please, to refuse this application. These children, wherever they may end up coming from, they deserve better than this home. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind members that you could say I commissioned a briefing note on material considerations for planning, the planning committee, not just in regard to care homes, which is something that is particularly brand new to us. Members that are new to the committee will not be aware that we've only started considering these very lately after the Ofsted changed their requirement that planning permission was required before they would licence the care home. And yes, we are corporate parents, we are members of the Highways Authority, but we mustn't blur the lines. So I'm going to move to Councillor Howcroft-Scott. You put your mic, yeah. Yeah, it's off. Do you know what? We need a new chamber.
Oh, I'm not the best at technology, but that really was flashing. So thank you, Councillor Clark, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sam. I don't want to repeat myself, but I am really troubled and concerned as a graduate of being in the foster provision myself as a child. As a foster carer myself, I have a complex needs child. I've got a 5-bedroom detached house and I've got an ordinary foster child, if there was one. But my complex needs child has opposition defiance disorder, ASD, ADHD. And this morning I was, meandering back to work. I'm a teacher. But we had an unannounced social work visit, we had an individual worker rock up, we had the CAMS worker for his medication, and we had another social worker. So I am really lucky because I live in a tiny, tiny road, there is a park and lots of people parked in there. So that's 4 cars for this one child. Okay, so I am planning does look at amenities and traffic, and I did a sort of visit to this this site in Chatham. It's not a very wide road. There's already a premiere on parking, and I am worried. I was a vulnerable child myself. I've had 14 vulnerable children who have, were on the right paths. They've been with me and they're doing well. But at the end of the day, I'm really concerned about this because police are now changing their protocol. They are not attending any mental health issues. Okay, so that means you're going to have this one member of staff in a room that's small and not fit for purpose, but she or he is dealing with, 4 lots of children. And my complex needs child, if he doesn't thrive with us, he's going to one of these places. Sometimes my husband and I work as a tag team, and also I have an adult son who's returned from university. And when he's on one, the three of us cannot manage that kind of behaviour. So you've got that times 4. You've got the traffic, you've got the amenities. We are struggling in Medway. Our leader of the Cabinet for Education, Tracy Coombs, she's got somebody, a parent in Gillingham, writing to her stating that one of her children are waiting to see CAMS, and they've been waiting to see CAMS for 4.5 years. These children may not, and probably likely not, to come from Medway. There's a little cottage industry developing where we're getting, and I work in Royal Greenwich, and God forgive me, but we do send our little pickles this way. And actually, you know, the house prices are cheaper. So the on costs are cheaper. And actually, there's no regard to the Medway people that we represent, we're elected to represent, and their infrastructure in terms of mental health provision, behaviour management provision, doctor provision, schools provision, all of those things. And dare I say, with other needy establishments so close by, there is police no longer responding to mental health. There's issues of child sexual exploitation. There's issues of gangs and conflicts. And I know you might not say they are planning issues, but they are going to be, a safeguarding issue for the environment in which those people live. And the last point I want to make, and is that's another family home lost, and we don't have enough housing in Medway. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I simply wanted to say that obviously I'm concerned about safeguarding issues, and I'm a member of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee, which is the committee that Councillor Howcroft-Scott chairs. But for the purposes of this committee, I have to act in a planning hat, and I struggle to find any planning reason for refusing this application. Whilst the example I'm about to give is not strictly comparable, because I'm talking about an elderly relative, I do have an elderly relative who lives in a semi-detached house in a cul-de-sac, who has regular care of visitors morning, noon and night. The district nurse descends on the property. The social worker and the occupational therapist have been in. And I don't believe you can argue that just because those things are going on, it makes life unbearable for the family next door. Clearly the children have to have a home, and in planning terms, even the items I've spoken about here aren't really planning issues, but I felt I had to address some of what Councillor Clark had said. In planning terms, I don't feel I'm able to turn this application down. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chair.
What do you want as well?
Thank you, Chairman. In the officer's report, twice he mentioned, if not a third time, that we need these homes for Medway children. And as we know in the past, we can never ever guarantee that it's going to be Medway's children, as has been emphasised by my colleague over there. However, in the applicant's letter that they submitted, they state very clearly that children considered for number 22 will be placed by the local authority, not externally, and subject to the consideration of risk assessments and placement matching. And therefore, I would request via you, Chairman, that if this application is approved by this committee, that we take them to the word and actually make that a condition that it's for Medway's children. Going on to the next page, once again, it's nothing to do with planning, but it says very clearly, the Head of Children's Services Commissioning has emailed further to advise they are only just aware of the provider who have a history of running supported accommodation in London. They have some concerns and would welcome dialogue with the applicant to get reassurance on those areas of concern. And that still has not been received by either the Head of Children's Commissioning or this committee. I feel the evidence that I've heard previously and again today that I cannot support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I do understand the concerns that have been expressed by members, I find myself coming down very much in support of Councillor Jones. We are a planning committee and we've got to look at planning issues and planning issues only. We have a fiduciary duty in that. What I believe is a planning issue is sufficiency of accommodation for various needs within Medway, be it residential, commercial, retail, industrial, or indeed, in this case, to provide sufficient accommodation for young people. And I don't believe that, contrary to one of my colleagues, that we can dictate where children come from who would be put into this sort of facility. I would remind members that we have a considerable amount of our young people, unfortunately, placed well outside of Medway because we've not got sufficient accommodation within Medway. Sometimes that is necessary for safeguarding reasons, and that's why I would be very happy to accept children from other areas, because that very well may be for safeguarding reasons. That swings and roundabouts, isn't it? So I think from that sort of regard, so for me, whilst I do understand the concerns of the near neighbours, and that I've seen that many, many times in the past, I personally have got no qualms. I will be supporting this application.
Any other member? Just regarding who might be placing children there, it will be a Children's Services Department for sure, and they'll be working with Ofsted for the licence. It's unclear whether that is Medway or another local authority. So I'm going to go to the Vice Chair to move the recommendation.
I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 4 as laid out in the main agenda.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. So, those in favour of the proposal?
Seven, Chairman.
Those against?
That's 5, Chairman.
Those abstaining at all? Okay. So the application for 22 Horsewood Road, Horsted has been approved, and can I thank Sam for coming along, and Trevor as the ward member for speaking. You may be excused if you wish. So I'm taking things out of order. So I'm going to take item 10 next. So Hannah, you're up. This is because Councillor Williams is going to speak as a ward member. Excellent. So, you ready, Hannah? Yeah. Let's go. Item 10. Swinsgate Avenue Cliff.
Good evening, members. This application is a retrospective application for a detached 3-bed dwelling which incorporates a dormer to the rear, a single-storey extension to the rear and a single-storey extension to the front. So this is just the location plan showing the site was originally part of the garden area for this corner plot here in Swingate. So it's just a closer view of the site. What needs to be pointed out, this is actually subject to a previously approved application in 2019 for a 2-bed detached property, which was allowed by the planning inspectorate. Oh, sorry. So some photographs of the development coming forward here. So this central one in the middle here, you can see the extent of the detached dwelling. And again, on this left-hand picture here, you can see the extent of the detached dwelling. Due to the scaffold, it's a bit difficult to make out some of the property. But when we look to the bottom here, we can see, so the flank wall of the dwelling as approved is with a gable-ended property coming down. And what we see here is there is a single-storey element at the rear coming forward, and there's a dormer within the roof space. So again, this is taken into account, taken from the neighbouring garden quite clearly. So you can see the extent of the house, which is already approved, with the extension here and the dormer. What we can't see very clearly in here is the front extension, but I'll show you that on plan form instead because that's a bit easier. So, and this last picture here is just a view in from the corner, so you can see the property coming forward. I think before we move on to the plans, again, I'll just point out the property here at One Swingate, which has a dormer in place as well within their roof space. I think what we need to look at, taking this forward, is obviously the footprint of the approved dwelling, and obviously the existence of this neighbouring dormer, because I think they're quite important factors going forward. So this is the previously approved plan. So what I think is sort of important to note here, that the plot was actually shown to be slightly wider than that coming forward. So the property here was slightly wider as approved than is actually being built. Shows 2 parking spaces allowed here, but you can see the extent in which this property, as approved, sits back beyond the adjacent neighbour. This is the proposed block plan of what this application is coming forward. So what we can see here highlighted in red are the elements that are above and beyond what is already approved. So we've got a single-storey front extension here, which is a continuation of sort of a front projection at single-storey on the approved plans. And we've got a 3-metre deep rear extension here, and then we've got the dormer within the roof space here. Right, these are not very clear at all, but this is the previously approved floor plans. So what you can see is at the front, at the ground floor, the property projects out at the front here. So you'll see when we go on to the next slide that the application has an extension that infills this area here. And then there will be a rear extension here. And as you can see, obviously, there is no second floor currently. What is important to note here as well is a 2-bedroom property. Both bedrooms being provided within this original approved were double bedrooms. So this was a 2-bed, 4-person unit. Sorry. Right, so this actually shows the proposed floor plans. So what we can see is the 3-metre deep rear extension. We can see the infill at ground floor. And then what we can see is that the front bedroom, which was previously a double, because of the staircase inclusion, that is now a single bedroom going up into the roof space to provide a double bedroom. So this is now a 3-bed, 5-person property. So the elevations as approved, we can see it was a gable-flanked property. And I suppose it's important to note here the existence of these windows. At the side, we have a side window on both elevations. And then going forward to the proposed plans, we have that front extension going forward. There are additional windows within the flank walls on both. And you can see that the dormer extension as being built is well within the confines of the roof structure, set in from both sides, set down from the ridge and set in from the eaves. We've got the rear extension at the back of the property. Oh, that's the last bit. So the recommendation on this application is to approve. The considerations are set out quite clearly within the officer report. I think it's important to note that there is a fallback position with this application, which has been taken into consideration. When approved by the inspector, it wasn't deemed necessary to restrict permitted development rights. Had the applicant completed construction of this and had it signed off, they would be able to extend all of these aspects of the property under permitted development rights. Going forward, as part of this application, we are proposing to incur restrictions on permitted development going forward to allow no further extensions without prior planning approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before I go to the ward member, I'll just say after I've been to the ward member, I'll come to Mr. Faulkner just to talk about the confusing complexness of this application, the approved, what is permitted, and the neighbourhood plan. Before we do that, I failed to do what I was going to do at the end of the last application, which is to read out. And the committee clerk knows what I'm going to do. So when we've approved a children's care home, but I will state, this is approval only in planning terms. The planning committee has not given permission for the children's care home. That permission is granted by Ofsted working with the Children's Services Department of the local authority whose children will be living there, which may not be Medway Council. And I'm sure that all the objections which are in the papers will be forwarded to Ofsted to make sure that they understood the full concerns of local residents. So, having said that, is it agreed that Councillor Williams speaks as ward member? Is it agreed?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me time to speak to you all this evening and for bringing the item forward in the agenda. This is a joint objection from myself and my ward colleague, Councillor Mrs Turpin. We were made aware of this application some weeks ago when neighbouring residents contacted us and raised their concerns. We have visited the site and we are also alarmed how overbearing this property is on its neighbours. As you have seen from the photograph, I think there's been a photograph distributed, Chair, yeah? As you've seen from the photograph, there's been a dramatic change in the skyline for the neighbours and they've lost a lot of daylight to their property and garden. As you have read from the report and heard in the planning presentation, this build was originally to be a two-bedroom house. When the build was in its early stages, residents informed me that the drawings and plans were not available on the council website. They had concerns fairly early on, but unable to check if the house was being built as per planning permission, as they could not see the drawings. Within the report, there's a reference to the Cliff and Cliffwood's neighbourhood plan. It has been considered that the development complies with Policy H2, Housing Infill. This policy states that infill will be supported on previous developed land. That is subjective. This is previously developed land. This piece of land did not previously have a house on it, but instead was a front and rear garden of neighbouring property. Properties that were built to specification to allow a high standard of amenity for all residents. This development considerably lowers the standard of amenity for several residents, including future residents of this house. Policy H6, House Design, of the Neighbourhood Plan states that all new housing design should respect the rural character of the area. Particular attention should be given to the building heights to ensure that roof heights do not aesthetically spoil the local area. Although this might not apply to the wider area of cliff, the roof height to include the dormer does spoil the aesthetic of the immediate area. In relation to Medway's local plan, we do not feel this house is in keeping. The policy states development should respect the scale, appearance and location of buildings, spaces and the visual amenity of the surrounding area. There is a reference to another dormer providing a precedent, but this property has been built much closer to other properties. The angle of this property in relation to others also makes a dormer much more intrusive to neighbours. The main objection falls under policy BNE2, amenity protection. Design of the development should have regard to privacy, daylight and sunlight. As you have seen from the photograph, this development will severely impact the privacy, daylight and sunlight of immediate neighbours. As this is a new build, then it would have made sense to apply for planning permission for a three-bedroom house at the outset, instead of applying for a permission for a two-bedroom property and then using permitted development rights. To build this way and now require retrospective planning permission is making a mockery of the planning system. Chairman, members, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. If I can just allow Mr Faulkner to speak, one about the impact of the neighbourhood plan. There's a Cliff and Cliffwood's neighbourhood plan. It's the first one to be adopted, and it's the only bit of planning, local planning document that's in play, as we don't have a local plan as such. And also to just go through that complex nature of what was approved at appeal and what is permitted development. And Mr. Faulkner.
I'll keep it on, hopefully. I'll take the neighbourhood plan first. As Chair has said, this is the first adopted neighbourhood plan in Medway, and that was formally adopted on the 24th of May. So in terms of planning, in terms of material weight, it should be given full material weight as part of the development plan. In fact, obviously it's more up to date than the local plan, as we're fully aware. So in terms of decision making, yes, it should be given full material weight as part of the decision making process. In terms of the appeal, this was rightly approved. The plans were shown earlier in terms it was a two-storey dwelling, it was 2 bedrooms, but in terms of the decision-making process, the planning inspector didn't impose a condition that removed permitted development rights from the development. So what could actually happen in this case, it's a 2-stage sequence. What they should have done is built the house in its entirety, and then they could actually look to erect or insert the dormer in the rear extension and the forward projection, and they would be permitted development. But they would obviously have to be done in that sequence. So the difficulty we actually have as officers here is, yes, this is in breach, and clearly in breach of the consent and the spirit of planning, but in terms of the fallback position, if these were to be removed, they could come back again and actually build them, bizarrely, in some ways from a planning perspective, under permitted development rights, and we couldn't actually control that. What we are looking to impose tonight, if this scheme is actually approved, is to remove any further rights from this particular development. And one of the particular concerns is Class E, which is outbuildings. And unless 50% of the garden area was covered, they could actually put quite a substantial outbuilding within the garden area of this development as well. But we are looking to remove those rights as part of this particular development. So that, unfortunately, is the situation we're in. So if members are minded to refuse the application, they would have a right of appeal, of course. And if that was lost, the situation possibly would be then enforcement action. But what they could do if they were made to remove these particular elements, that the new landowner or the house owner could actually come back and build them under permitted developments at a future date. So that's a situation that members need to be aware of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. And can I just remind members what we're talking about here, which was application reference MC 1990-41 for a 2-bedroom detached property, which was turned down on the perceived area of it was refused on the basis of perceived harm the proposal will have on the character and appearance of the area. That subject was dismissed on appeal to allow the 2-bedroom property to be built as stated. However, the fault is not just the planning inspector, it's in terms of allowing this to go for, he did not remove permitted development rights. Surely our own planning department should have taken a look at this to say, well, you know, there's a decision here that needs to be made, and that hasn't been done so. And so that's my first question, really. Can we go back to the photographs, please? The photographs of the houses, thank you. And as you can see, look at the sunlight, look at the shadows. That carbuncle, and that's what it is totally removing all the sunlight from its neighbour, all of it. Look at the garden, there is no sunlight there at all, which is against our policy of permitted development rights. And therefore, once again, the applicant has turned around and said, well, it's not really a 3rd bedroom, it's a storage area. But it's already been stated very clearly this evening that it's a 3rd bedroom.
Reference has also been made to a dormer on the fourth picture in your far left-hand corner already being in place. Well, that fourth dormer actually looked into the garden of where that development is now, so it had never bothered anybody else. So to use that as some sort of excuse to say, well, that's permitted because one already exists is just ludicrous. And I just cannot understand why we should be sitting here debating whether we should allow this to continue. That dormer should be removed and it should go back to its original status of a two-bedroom house. And if they want to come forward for further permitted development rights in the future, let them do so. And then finally, we've heard from the councillors and from the residents, when they tried to ascertain what was actually being built there, they couldn't get any access to the plans. Neither could they get any response from the planning department of how they could access those plans. So there's a whole lot of issues going around on this particular problem that nobody seems to want to take responsibility for. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a fan of retrospective planning, but I've listened to the ward councillor and I'm really struggling this evening, Chair, because the appearance sticks out like a sore thumb. I think it's contrary to the local plan that we passed recently, and we had a lovely evening here with Dave Harris talking about not only that local plan, but the local plan in Chatham. I think it impacts on the residents, the overshadowing, the overlooking, the effect on the whole ambience of the area and the character of the area. And, you know, I have to say, I'm troubled and concerned about the scale of the development as well.
Thank you. I don't know. Ms. Scala, is somebody able to tell me, obviously the application was received relatively recently, on the 14th of July. I presume was that brought to our attention, and once it was on the system, the drawings were available?
Sorry, I'm just actually on the public access to see whether or not the original 2019 plans are publicly available, because that's the bit I think that's under question, rather than, is that right, rather than the current application, it's the previous 2019 one.
They sent me copies of emails they sent to you and others and not got a response.
I'm just... Okay, so I'm on public access rather than the internal planning systems, and I can see all the drawings are available. I'm not sure when they became available. I don't know if that's always been the case, but they are currently available for viewing online.
Councillor Pearce?
Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Chairman. On page 101, it says that the policies in the neighbourhood plan should be given significant weight. And on the weighting scales with planning, significant is the highest weighting you can give to a policy. Further on, it says in the report that only considerable weight should be given to the fallback position. So the significant weight for the neighbourhood plan policy outweighs the fallback position. That's what it says in the report, the wording in the report. So the application doesn't comply with the neighbourhood plan and the policies within it, and on that basis it should be refused. Enforcement action should then be taken, the dormer should be removed, and then if the applicant wishes to build a dormer later under permitted development rights, then that's the proper process it should go through. Thank you.
Councillor Galvin?
I must say, thank you, Chair. I find myself a bit torn on this because I'm looking at in front of me, the photograph that was submitted separately, which was sent by the email to us this afternoon, and it does show the situation, I think, a lot more clearly than those photographs we've got there, Chair, because it's got the scaffolding away, and certainly the whole thing totally dominates the rear garden. And the thought occurs to me is that if this had been a normal application first-time application with that dormer, would the officers have recommended that for approval? It's an interesting question. But we're now told that if it had been built as should have been, they could put this carbuncle, as my colleague well describes it, anyway under permitted development rights. So my heart's telling me we should refuse this, but my head's telling me that to take the enforcement action, which will be a long procedure, as we all well know, for those who have been on the committee for any length of time, sometimes to take enforcement action doesn't take months, it seems to take years. And then we could end up with this situation exactly as we've got before us again, which seems a totally ridiculous situation to be in. But that's where we are, because unfortunately we are stuck with the permitted development rights legislation, which I must say I have grave doubts on numerous issues about permitted development rights. I think common sense says one's got to support this, but it's with a very heavy heart, I've got to say, because this is a ridiculous situation.
Any other member? Do you wish to come? Oh, sorry, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, sorry, just on a point of clarification, Chair, I think the officers have in fact addressed this point of permitted development, because I understood the officers to say that any further development would now need a fresh planning application. Yeah, okay, and the implication that what Councillor Etheridge said was that the officers weren't paying attention to the matter or were to that effect, but the officers have said further planning application will be needed. I just wanted to clarify that in my own mind. Thanks, Chair.
You have a member? Councillor Field.
Yeah, it's just a point of clarification here. So if we decide against it and there was enforcement action to remove it, but then they could put application with permitted development, could we be liable for, so you might just cut me off here completely and say that's not the case, but would there be any liability in terms of paying for the reinstatement of it? That's I'm just wondering whether that perverse situation could occur.
Who's going to give an answer to that?
Thank you. I can't imagine a scenario where we would have to pay for the building works to reinstate it. What I do think is a likely scenario is that we would lose on appeal and we would lose with costs, because to try and enforce against something that is effectively permitted development, if it had been done in the right order, which it hasn't been, unfortunately, we're likely to go down with costs at appeal.
Councillor Hale-Croft, you indicated again.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Yeah, I am worried for this community, because you don't often get, as Councillor Turpin has got, so many letters objecting, because it's not a, when I Googled it, it's not that big a, area, really, and we do need to listen to our ward colleague who's kindly come this evening. Sorry, the ward councillor, not my ward colleague. I've got lovely Councillor Curry, and also Councillor Pearce, who, it's about the local plan. There's no point in having a local plan if we're not going to adhere to it. And also, wrong is wrong, whoever is doing it, I feel.
One thing can be said, it's a mess, yeah? So I don't like retrospective planning applications, but also well aware that any refusal would end up us undoubtedly losing at appeal if it went to appeal. So I'm going to go to the Vice Chair to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the ward councillors and other comments that are made that it is an absolute mess and it should never be given planning permission, but because of the permitted development rights, I feel that there's not much choice but to be for the application, but it's not something that I agree with. So I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 8.
And I will second that, Chair.
Okay. Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 9, Chairman.
Those against?
I can't count. Councillor Hamadashi. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
That's 3, Chairman.
Okay. And no abstains? Okay. So the application for Winsgate Avenue Cliff has been approved. Can I thank Councillor Williams for coming along? And we'll move on to item 6, and Councillor Stampy is going to remove herself from the room, and Councillor Etheridge as well. Okay. Madeline Mead is going to speak to the item.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for the Avenue Tennis Club in Chillingham. This is the site here. It's got permission which was allowed at appeal for 7 houses, and this application is for a minor material amendment to that permission that was allowed at appeal, and will amend the condition 2, which is the approved drawings. So this is just the application site and some photos, the entrance in, access into the site. Within the site looking to the rear of the property's 2nd Avenue, access road looking into the site, looking towards the rear of the properties in Glebe Road, new flats in Glebe Road, inside the site looking towards the rear properties in 1st Avenue, and that's standing right behind the flats in Glebe Road, looking towards the rear of the properties in 2nd Avenue. And again, this one just shows the landscape screening to the northeast of the site and the properties in 2nd Avenue. So this application, what this shows is this is the development that was allowed at appeal, and this is the proposed development. So the main changes to the development is the heights of plots 1, 5, 6 and 7, which are this plot and these 3, will be increased by 0.8 metres. The roof of them plots will be altered. They'll be barn hipped or barn hip and gable ended. Plots 2 and 3, I've lost my mouse, which are these 2 plots, will be set slightly further back into the plot by about 0.7 metres. Plot 3, which is this property, will be handed, and it will be moved southeast by approximately 1.1 metre, which would allow for, they've got parking, you can see it on this one, so the parking was originally there, they're going to move it to the other side, just to here. And plot 4, the access to their parking will be changing. So previously they accessed up along here to the parking spaces. It's now going to be accessed across, and the parking space will be moved forward, so it won't be so far back into the site. So the next drawing basically shows the approved houses, the design of them, and these are the proposed houses, the designs. On the top one, what you can see is an overlay of what was approved, and the pink highlights the proposed height of the dwellings. So the design of the dwellings, the actual changes, there'll be amendments to the shape of the windows, sizes of the windows, They'll have Juliet balconies at first floor level to the front. They'll also have like square bay windows, and they'll have like this feature canopy over the front door. As well, the overall width of the dwellings will change by 100 millimetres to 120 millimetres, and this is to do with meeting the wall thickness requirements for building control. So overall, we consider that the application is a minor material amendment and is not materially different to that already approved. It would not have a detrimental impact on existing neighbouring amenity or future occupiers of the development. Does not have any highways impacts, and accordingly the application is recommended for approval with conditions as set out. Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm happy that they're effectively progressing with the permission they've already got on appeal. So I think we did make the right decision last time round to stop that additional dwelling on the amenity green space. So that's good, and yeah, I think support the application. I can't see anything wrong with the changes. Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Helgoff-Stott.
One of the letters of objection mentioned loss of trees. I can't see any mentioned in the report. Is that not true then?
It's not mentioned in the report because it would have been covered under the original report that went to appeal. So this doesn't change anything on that except for changes to the houses and the slight difference in their location, but it doesn't affect any trees.
Thank you.
Quite clearly, residents are still very upset with the original planning permission has been one at appeal, but we are where we are. So, any other member? Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Jones, who's acting up as Vice Chair. Would you like to move the recommendation?
Yes, I move the recommendation, Chair, approval with conditions 1 to 22 as set out in the report.
I second that.
Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 10, Chairman.
Those against?
That's 1, Chair.
I think that's everybody. Okay. So the application for Avenue Tennis Club Glebe Road has been approved. So now move on to item 7. Before item 7, can we have the two members back in the room?
Chair, do you mind if we stop desk? This is like legally wobbling. With my disabilities, it's causing me
Okay. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Please go ahead. Do you want to swap it with the... Okay, move on to item 7, which is the application for St Nicholas School in London Road, which is actually Montfort Road in Strood. Mr Stubbs was going to speak to it. Thank you.
Good evening, members. This application seeks planning permission for the construction of a new 2-storey teaching wing with a single-storey pupil toilet block, together with the alterations of the existing parking and landscaping. This will aid the expansion of the school by providing 4 additional classrooms and the primary provision at the school. This is the aerial of the site. This is the school unit itself here. The site is accessed from Montfort Road here, and this access is shared with the Strood Youth Centre, which is this building here. The application looks to formalise parking in this access here and extend to the front to provide the extra classrooms. On this view here, you obviously see that it's quite open space, and the local plan is designated open space, and in policy L3 of the local plan. And this does allow for development for essential education purposes subject to the retention or reposition of outdoor sports centre. And other things to be aware of the site is the TPO trees that wrap around here. This tree is TPO'd and these trees haven't got permission, but we are unaffected. This is photos from London Road. This is the closest neighbour at number 38 London Road. This is the existing two-storey element to the school, which will be extended forward when I show you the plans later. And again, this is just looking the other way, London Road, just again to see the details. Things to note, obviously the land levels are significantly different and raised higher up in the school, and the ground floor of this property is at road level. And this is looking back up London Road, and this is the TPO tree belt that I showed you on the plan last. And this is the entrance from Montford Road, and the plan should show this area to be more formalised for parking, where it's all informal currently. And this is how the school looks in plan existing. This is the existing elevations, existing two-storey element we just saw on the photographs. This is what you'd see as you come through the entrance in Montford Road. This is the elevation that fronts that property at 38 London Road and Mandura Court adjacent, and this is the opposite one that faces into the field. So this is the existing floor plans of the school. The area to the front, which would be demolished, contains the ICT units and storage. And there's currently small storage space at the first floor. That's the only element at first floor level currently. Members could possibly remember the decision, previous application MC 221351 to extend the school for similar purposes for a primary school. This one had only 3 classrooms, and it was in this single-storey linked building by this canopy. Members had concerns about impact on neighbouring amenity due to those land level changes I explained before, and also because it was in the school playing fields, playground. Sorry, they had to provide additional hard play in this mugger. So they've withdrawn that application to reconsider those concerns, and this has led to this planning application, which is for consideration tonight. As you can see, this is the 2-storey extension of the front. This element here is a 2-storey staircase, and then there's a single-storey extension here and a single-storey extension to the entrance, and it creates a toilet block which can be used internally and at playtime. As you can see here, this is the formalisation of that access route, so there's formal car parking space now rather than informal, which will serve both the school and the youth club. And there's additional tree planting, there's 7 here. The extension would result in the loss of 3 of the trees on this TPO belt there. They are graded B, but there is a replacement of 6 trees to be here to be considered as a condition for the final details of the positioning and type for a suitable replacement. And if you see the elevations, this is what you'd see from London Road. The 2-storey nature and a larger roof than before. Then you've got the single-storey brick building, got the 2-storey timber cladding effect staircase, and this is the single-storey toilet entrance area. And then this is the views. This will be the one facing Mandura Court and London Road. Again, the extension here, the staircase cladding building, and the toilet blocks. And this is the proposed layout, which remains exactly the same as before from this side here, but then there are two additional car parks, classrooms to the front, a relocated ICT unit that was lost in the demolition, and then at first floor the staircases that are required for the first floor's teaching, and then the additional 2 classrooms in the first floor level. So in principle, because of the need as set out in the report for school placements, it's considered that it's acceptable in principle. The removal of the trees is also considered acceptable due to when balanced up against the need for the school and the proposed replacements. And therefore the extension is considered to be of suitable size and scale for the area. With regards to amenities, the applicant has provided a sunlight daylight assessment which assesses the impacts on neighbouring windows, which all meet the BRE guidance. And this slide just shows the applicant's assessment on sunlight. The green area here just shows where it's all passing the BRE guidance of having at least 2 hours of daylight on the 31st of March, so there's no objection to loss of daylight. With regards to highways, there's concerns and representations about the impact of additional pupil numbers at school. In the report, it does clearly say that it is acknowledged that there are existing problems. However, providing the school close to the catchment area required could encourage parents to walk to school, and travel plan conditions is imposed to help mitigate existing issues. And the formalisation of this car parking area is welcomed by the highways team. There's no objections regarding contamination, air quality or suds and flooding. You'll be aware from the report that we're requesting delegated powers to deal with the ecology regarding a bat survey which was required. The demolition of the front building needed 2 additional bat surveys, and they have been submitted and are currently being assessed. The reason why we're recommending delegated powers now is just so that the school, if recommended for approval by today, could be developed in the right timescales. Subject to those recommendations, we'll be recommending approval with that delegated power on those conditions.
Okay. Councillor Van Dijk.
Thank you. I think this second iteration of the planning proposal is to be welcomed. The original application would have caused extreme blight to the residents of Maduring Court, blocking out all of the light into at least 3 properties there, and also the removal of the mugger from the proposal is also to be welcomed. So I would support this application. I would have one question though, and that is if the work that's being done at the front of the building, could you advise us of the implications of the closure of London Road during the installation of that extension? Thank you.
Mr. Stubbs.
There is a CMP, Construction Environment Management Plan, so if they needed to close the road, that would be considered under that condition if it's required. But they haven't stated that it was needed at present, but would be covered under that condition.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. It's nice to see a very high quality and sympathetic proposal with regards to the Victorian property that's there at the moment. It looks very good, and it's refreshing to see that. So I support the proposal, but just a couple of comments, questions. The application proposes 6 new, I think they're tulip trees, to be the ones that replace the ones with the TPOs. Tulip trees are not native, they're North American, and I think any replacement trees need to be native. The ecology report has a number of recommendations such as bird boxes, bee hotels, bat boxes, log piles and additional trees, which is fantastic. Condition 12 covers this, and that information will be coming forward to officers in due course, but just to have some reassurance that those recommendations will be implemented and will be conditional for the proposal going forward, because it would be good to get those installed to immediately benefit the ecology. Just the only sticking point I've got is that the Wooden Trust do recommend that 3 trees are planted for every TPO tree that is lost. So this would be 9 trees rather than 6. And can we ensure that the replacement trees are not whips and are nice semi-mature trees? And if we can have 9 instead of 6. But apart from that, Chairman, I'm very happy with what I'm seeing in front of me. Thank you.
Just to say, the previous application, there was a greater loss of trees than there are this time round. And I'm quite sure the senior principal tree officer will make sure that the appropriate trees are planted to appropriate size. So I'm going to go to Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Sorry, Chair, the last 2 councillors, I can tick off my list of things they've covered. Sorry.
Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to make a comment. I think this proves the worth of having our planning pre-application presentations, because that enabled members to bring the problems with the previous application forward. So I think we need to use this, I think, as an example to anybody else of the use of having those pre-application presentations to members, because I think we've managed to get what is, I think, a much better scheme, particularly with the no longer leading the mugger and the amount of sterilisation that would make on the school's premises. So all in all, I think this has turned out to be a much better scheme than originally went before us. Thank you.
It's also a good demonstration of having a site visit, because we had a site visit to have a look at the site.
Oh, yes, I forgot that. You're absolutely right,
and,
Chair. Of course, yeah.
Entering the resident's home, you actually realise what and though not a much of a roof, it really did shade what was left of a small yard. Any other member? Okay. So I'm going to go to the Vice Chair to move the recommendation. The 2-part recommendation, of course.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to A, delegated powers to Dave Harris, Head of Planning, adding any additional conditions as necessary as set out in the main agenda, and B, conditions 1 to 16 as set out in the main agenda. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, seconded, Chair, a bit slow off the mark there. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, those in favour of the proposal?
That's 13, Chairman.
Any against? That's it. Okay. So the recommendation for St Nicholas Voluntary Controlled Infant School, which is going to become a primary school, so has been approved. Thank you. And Mr Stubbs, you excuse if you wish to leave. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I'm going to move on to item 8. And before this guy presents, just to point out there is supplementary agenda advice on this item. So, Hannah.
Thank you, Chair. I was about to point out the supplementary agenda, but I don't have to do that now. Right, this planning application is for the construction of a 66-bed care home facility with separate retail unit at land adjacent to the balancing pond at Halling, and this is with associated landscaping and car parking. Let me just scroll. So the red line area here shows the site outline. Members should note there is a previous approval in 2020 here, which was for an extra care facility. This was an 80-bed, or this was an 81 and 2-bed apartment scheme, which basically the extra care facility is for semi-independent living, so that's for people with marginally less care needs. So there's a lot more independent living, a lot more people coming and going. That development was actually up to 5 stories in height, which you'll be able to see as we go forward a bit more, the comparisons. So the revised scheme that we have today sees the retail units coming forward as before, and I'll show you the retail unit is this sort of purple hatched area at the top here. And then we have the care facility coming forward, which is now a 66-bed care facility or care home. So rather than apartments, these are now single bedrooms with ensuite facilities, with shared communal facilities. So this layout plan here, the green shows the footprint of the care home coming forward. And if you can see, the orange shows the footprint of the previously approved 80-bed or 80-unit extra care facility. So as we can see here, there's quite a sort of comparable difference in footprint size. This aerial photograph just shows a site in a bit more detail. So the roundabout here, which is Formby Road in the A228, and this is the access in towards St Andrews Lake and St Andrews Park residential. We've got the balancing pond and attenuation pond here at the front of the site. This rather colourful layout here shows the footprint of the building, shows the of both buildings, including the supermarket, and we can see here the car parking for the supermarket as laid out, which has got 20 spaces. And we see the hard stand in here and car parking for the care home, which is 29 spaces, including disabled spaces. Just pointing out here from this, we can see the extent of the landscaped area, open space for the care home facility, and the landscape area by the parking and the balancing pond, and additionally the planting and landscaped area up towards the roundabout within the St Andrews Park site. Again, just a landscape drawing here helping to sort of demonstrate the amount of landscaping provision that can come forward now with the reduced footprint of this building. And in contrast with that, we've got reduced parking need as well, which has also allowed for that greater landscaping. Just to orientate members through the photograph. So photograph 1 here has been taken from the roundabout on the A228 going in towards the site. We've got the lake on the left-hand side here. The actual site sits to the right. This second photograph here, as you can see from the arrows in the middle of the screen, are from the lake side of the road looking back towards the development site. You can see St Andrews Park there and the balancing pond here, and then Formby Road sits just at the back here. This photograph is taken from the sort of top end of Limeburner, I think it's called Limeburner Road, Avenue, I can't remember now. So this is where it takes the corner. So we've got the northern part of the site, and you can see the Red Row St Andrews Park development in the background. And this fourth one is taken from overlooking from the balancing pond, again through the site towards the development already in existence. Photograph 5 has been taken along the top road, looking back towards the lake, and you have the application site sitting on the left-hand side. Photograph 6 here is taken from the existing entrance into the site, looking sort of back towards the roundabout and the site entrance. So the care home is actually proposed to sort of be in this part of the site here. Photograph 7 looks back towards the existing Medway site, so the co-op or retail facility that is proposed is proposed here. I say co-op because that is the user coming forward at this stage. And then photograph 8 here is taken from the roundabout at Brooks Place and Limeburner. I'm going to say Avenue, but I'm possibly wrong. Looking back towards where the co-op will be sited, but obviously those views are slightly obscured there by the substation. So looking at elevations for the care home, the north elevation here is what would be seen when entering the side. It's Limeburners Drive. There we go. I've got it written down here. So this would be from Limeburners Drive. So this is across from the top road, and this south elevation here is what would be viewed looking at the property coming in from the roundabout Formby Road, the A228. Just sort of point out that there is some variation in the roofscape here, pointing out that we've got some variation in the materials as well, elevational treatment. So the west elevation is the main view, which is effectively what you would see from Lime Burners Drive as you drive around. And we can see that there's a central core here, which is the communal areas, and this is where we've got the balconies and doors opening out onto the landscaped areas within the site. And then this east elevation is effectively the internal elevation. So this shows the main entrance to the care home with the sort of terrace balcony over. But this is the elevation fronting the car park area. So this next line drawing is just a helpful comparison to show what has been approved previously as the extra care. So that shows the sort of outline of that building in relation to what's coming forward now as a reduced number as a care home rather than extra care. What I would like to point out, the height of this proposed building is now 12.8 metres at its maximum point. What we were looking at before on that larger scale building was a maximum height of 16.4 metres, so there's quite a reduction in scale. I will whip through the floor plans because they're quite samey, but we've got the entrance in here, which shows the reception area. We've got communal areas here, which is sort of dining lounge area. At this end, south elevation, we've got a garden. They call that the garden room. And then substantially, it's the single units, all with ensuite facilities, with various sort of plant rooms and staff room areas. The first floor, again, we've got a coffee shop area within this internal elevation, which actually has the balcony over the main entrance. We've got another lounge dining area at the back with balcony, and we have a quiet lounge on this south elevation. And then on the second floor, we've got the library lounge area within this internal aspect. Another lounge dining area for the occupants on this floor. Possibly my favourite bit, we've got the cocktail lounge on this south elevation here. The roof plan here just helps to demonstrate the extent of the solar panels that are being proposed as part of this scheme. So in total, it says quite small here, but in total there's 378 square metres of solar panels, which is actually 270 solar panels in all within that roof space. Helpfully, we've been provided with some CGIs. So this is the internal elevation. So you can see the main entrance here with the car parking area in front for the care home, and that's the sort of internal elevation, as it were. And then this is the south elevation. So this is where the garden room and sort of lounges are. And we've got the outside seating landscape area. We can see obviously where that sits in relation to St Andrews Lake. And then this elevation here shows the sort of main communal areas with the terraces coming out. So this is effectively the north elevation, I suppose. And then going forward, we have, there we go, some layout plans and elevations in relation to the retail store. So the retail store, I'll have a look up here. So it sits in this top corner here, and we've got the parking to the north and sort of to the south of the property. So the parking area is in relation to this elevation. This is the main pedestrian entrance to the site, so the parking would be here and up here. This entrance in here is for staff and deliveries, etc. So the staff and deliveries entrance point is in this top area here. Elevational treatment, quite standard for the type of retail unit coming forward. We've got a glazed entrance all along that south elevation, and we've got a green roof proposed on this building as well. And then that is a CGI image of what is proposed. And what you can see here is actually the landscape buffer effectively in between the parking area for the co-op and the parking area for the care home coming forward. And I'll just leave that up for discussion. But that is, again, that south elevation going forward. So overall, it's been considered that the proposal for a 66-bed care home with the retail unit have been considered acceptable in this location, especially given that this proposal is substantially smaller and less intensive a use than that already permitted, and it's considered to be in keeping with the adjacent residential development at St Andrews Park. Just finally to point out, I would like to say that consideration of the neighbour objections in relation to this has been taken into account. It's felt that the concerns in relation to primary care provision, which is the main emphasis of neighbour objections, have been well addressed within the case officer report. So subject to the conditions and the supplementary, there is a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chairman. Can we go directly to the conditions, condition 19, where it says the use of retail unit hereby permitted shall only operate between the hours of 600 to 2200 Mondays to Sundays, inclusive of public holidays. I'm sure the legal officer will correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you could only have 6 hours trading on a Sunday for a retail unit.
It depends on the size of the store as to whether or not it's caught by the Sunday trading hours. Given that it's being proposed for longer, I assume it's small enough to not be caught.
Okay, we just need that clarified then, Chairman. In addition to that, we don't seem to have any conditions regarding to climate change for electric powered charging for any of the cars. And I appreciate that we are now looking at a care home, but I'm not quite sure just how many people in a care home want a cycle storage area, because how many of them are going to cycle? So I'd just like that clarified as well, please.
I think one of the lovely drawings actually showed charging points. Yeah, so, Ms. Gummer?
If the electric vehicle charging point condition has been left off, that is actually my error, and I'm more than happy to add that. In relation to cycle storage, that would be for any members of staff, visiting members of the public to the care home as well, so we would be happy for that to be part of the application and secured, basically, for that reason, so that that provision is there.
So, talking about...
Sorry, EV charging is at condition 16, Chair.
I couldn't find it, but thank you for that clarification.
I'm quite sure that it's correct about the hours for the shop is relatively small compared to large supermarkets. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. Once again, and this is a very high quality proposal in front of me. I wasn't here for the previous one, and it looks very good. I'm struggling to find anything really to stack up against it. I am sympathetic to the residents, but the positives of this are quite considerable, and it's very high quality. I just hope one day I'm lucky enough to live there, live next to the lake. The solar panels, of course, fantastic. As long as it matches, as long as the reality matches the pictures, I can't see any reason to refuse this. And plus the co-op next door for the residents that will be moving into here, that's very convenient. The green roof is fantastic. And I believe it was a brownfield site before. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, thank you.
This was a brownfield site, and I spent many a happy time doing some conservation work in that area. Yeah. Any other member? Excellent. Excuse me, Councillor Gilbourne.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. It was just to say, the look of the development.
So you're not a fan, but you're okay with a green flat roof? Okay. Is there a question there? Sorry.
I think it's just is that a general policy thing? It's new to the committee whether it's a policy thing to have green roofs, more green roofs than we have at the moment on new developments.
There's not a policy, but we welcome any green roofing of any property. That's for sure. Any other member? If not, I'll move to the Vice Chair to move the recommendation. Recommendations on the agenda and on the supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 21 in the main agenda and amendments in the supplementary agenda. Thank you.
Seconded. Thank you, Chair.
those in favour of the proposal?
That's 13, Chair.
Excellent. So the proposal for St Andrews Park hauling has been approved, and can I thank Mr Collins and DH Planning for their wonderful presentation. Actually, it looks really smart drawings, and now the gauntlet's been thrown down to make sure it looks like your drawings. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to item 9. And Ms. Gunner, you can leave if you wish, or stay for the last item. So Madeline Mead's going to present the Grove Road upper hauling.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for Grove Road in Upper Halling, and this is the site location plan. The application is for the demolition of the existing building, which is a commercial building, and the construction of 8 dwellings with associated parking and carports, together with hard and soft landscaping. I'd also like to draw your attention to supplementary advice. And within that, there's 3 additional conditions to do with contamination. There's a section to do with the justification for them conditions for contamination, and a section to do with road surfacing, and that the applicant will not be resurfacing the road. But it was acknowledged by the inspector in the last appeal that they considered it to be a reduction being dwellings and it was commercial, so they didn't see any need for it to be resurfaced. So this is, the site, and this is it on the aerial view. So currently, it is in commercial use. It is within the village boundary of Upper Halling. It is brownfield land. There will be a loss of an existing commercial use. However, the site is not protected by any employment designation within the local plan. And also the use is considered non-conforming use, as it's predominantly residential in this location in the countryside. The site is also within the green belt, and it is adjacent to an area of outstanding natural beauty. So these are just some photographs of the site. This is the commercial building that's on there at the moment, and I believe this is the toilet block, which forms part of the commercial building. Just some more photos of it, and that's looking down Bradley Road, I believe, and the commercial buildings there. These are dwellings that are on Grove Road and Bradley Road. They're all 2-storey dwellings. And this is from outside the commercial unit, looking towards the street down the access road. These are some wider views. This one's taken from the street, and this one is taken from Chapel Lane. This one is considered to have the more sensitive views, which we'll discuss later in the application. So this is the scheme that was previously refused and was dismissed at appeal. This was for 11 dwellings. There were some 2-storey, but there was also 2.5 stories in height dwellings. They did form quite a lot of dwellings across the frontage along Bradley Road. They also weren't providing any landscaping, and they were dismissed at appeal. The main reasons being the impact of 2.5 stories, the built form in the built urban form due to the amount of dwellings that are on the Bradley Road with no breaks in between them, lack of landscaping, and the impact on the AONB and living conditions of future occupants. So this is the layout of the proposed. We've got 3-bed dwellings, 4-bed dwellings and 2-bed dwellings. These are the 3 beds, this is a 4-bed. 4-bed here, 3-bed and 2 beds. They're proposing landscaping around here along this boundary and a more significant landscape buffer to this boundary. The parking on site meets the requirements. Each dwelling has 2 car parking spaces, and there's visitor car parking spaces. All the dwellings will meet the space standards and provide adequate private amenity space. There were some concerns that units 3, 4 and 5, which is this one and this one, may have an impact due to the proximity to these properties because they've got bedroom windows at first floor level. But there is a separation distance of between 12.7 and 13.5 metres, and we consider that to be an acceptable separation distance. So these are just the elevations of the 2-bedroom dwellings and the floor plans. The 3-bed dwellings with the floor plans and the 4-bedroom dwellings with the floor plans. So this is the proposed landscaping plan. So to the southwestern boundary, they're proposing a 5-metre landscaping buffer, which is, this is the boundary that's considered the most sensitive. And this just shows basically after 10 years and after 20 years how they consider the landscaping would have developed. The landscaping along this boundary will be between 1 and 2 metres. The North Downs AOMB officer has been consulted and raises no objections subject to landscaping being secured by condition, which it has. Overall, it's considered the scheme is acceptable as set out in the officer report and supplementary agenda and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a much better scheme than what was proposed before, and unfortunately lost that appeal. One of the things I noticed in the report was that there was a bat identified in one of the reports, but I've just seen on condition 6 that there is a condition that the applicant has to show how they were enhanced biodiversity, and also measures to things like bat boxes and things like that, the make and model of any boxes, location, etc. So that condition is in there to cover that. So hopefully we'll see some improvements like bat boxes, bird boxes and the rest of it. But apart from that, I think it's fine. Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Colvin.
Over and all, this is probably quite an improvement on what's there existing. It's a brownfield site. The only thing, whilst this is in a way, what I'm going to say, it's covered by condition 3, the drawings that we've got along with the report are difficult to determine from those what the quality of the build's going to be. I'd like some reassurance from the officer that they will take, given it's right next to an area of outstanding natural beauty, that some attention is paid to the palette of materials they're going to use, because the materiality can make such a huge difference on the quality of the development. I hope the officers will insist on a high quality palette of materials for this development.
Will you ensure that that's taken on board?
I mean, condition 3 does cover the submission of materials, so we'll make sure we've got our urban design officer who will give us comments as well on the use of materials in that area.
This is a sensitive site, especially as we're coming up to the next process of the local plan, which there's potential housing in this area, which would be contrary to the environment, that's for sure. And just going back to the previous last one, we were talking about, do we have a policy for flat roofs? We don't have a local plan, therefore we don't have policies. That's the problem at the moment. Okay, any other member? Excellent. Okay, if I go to the Vice Chair to move the recommendations on the agenda papers and with noting the additional ones in the supplementary agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 23 in the main agenda, additional conditions 24 to 26, the new section regarding contamination and deleting the section regards to road servicing as set out in the supplementary agenda. Thank you.
I second all that, Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. Those in favour of the proposal? I think it's everybody, so.
Yeah. That's 13, Jim.
Okay, that's everybody? Okay. So, approval is given for item 9, that is Grove Road Upper Hauling, and thank you for attending. That's the end of the meeting.
Thank you for chairing.